Yeah, yeah. Now there was there was mentions when I was obviously reading up on on this case that originally he was sentenced to death,
Yes.
and that was overturned.
Yeah, that was so he was sentenced in 1999 for my stepmother's murder. He was sentenced to death. And then in 2004, his death sentence was overturned. Um, and I guess for lack of a better terms, or to kind of give a full extent here, um, what had happened was when he was charged with my stepmother's murder, he was not charged with another crime. He was charged with my stepmother's murder first, then he was charged with my mother's murder. And so, what he was saying was that even if he was convicted, he still shouldn't have been given a death sentence because he had no prior criminal history. And what they did in my stepmother's trial, murder trial, was they used his conviction from my mother's murder and they started to bring evidence into that trial.
Yeah.
So they kind of they built the death sentence on basically both of them, but when you dig down deep and understand like the legal process, there wasn't really a basis to have a death sentence, but and that's what the courts agreed. They sided with him and said, you know what? Okay, well your conviction is still standing. You're still guilty, but we'll just change your sentence from death to another life sentence.
And in your point of view, I mean, I know that some people sit on the fence in America with regards to the death penalty, but in your point of view, do you feel that that was the sentence he deserved?
You know, I do have an interesting perspective as far as the death penalty and capital punishment. Even when I was taking college courses, I actually wrote a paper on this. Um, I do not believe in capital punishment. That's my own, opinion. Um, and it's a combination of sorts, and it's not just because it's my father. But and even as I grew up and as I gone through my life, that kind of that position has actually solidified itself. Um, but for me, the death sentence, it's I guess in a way it's somewhat of a waste of money because there, there's there's so many people that get sentenced to it, but so few actually that get followed through. So that's number one. And number two is, you know, for me and how I kind of view things and how the things that I've been exposed to, death for me is, it can be an easy way out.
Yeah.
Um, you can accept death, you can accept your fate. Um, Me personally, I think it's a lot harder to live with oneself. I think that it's harder. Um, and, and some of his actions kind of prove that. He tries to put on a facade that, he is doing okay in prison, and prison is, kind of like this, kind of like daycare for adults in a way that he gets fed 3 times a day. Well, if he truly felt that way, he wouldn't be still trying to get out of prison.
Yeah.
If he liked where he was at, he wouldn't still be trying on his appeals. So
Mm.
it's just a facade. And so, but yeah, I just think that, overall capital punishment in terms of, especially for him, um, I believe that part of his punishment should be to,
Live with what he's done.
live with it, live with what you did. And that it kind of fuels me a little bit. Kind of going into, when we talk about motivations and success, I want him to live with the guilt and live with everything, and watch his youngest son, which is me, become 100 times the man that he ever was or that he ever could be. And that's my opinion.
Yeah, that's a really respectful way to look at it. And yeah, I mean, now that kind of leads on to like the person that you are today, which is what we want to really discuss as well, because this is the success part. This is the success part because you were 16. Obviously, September 11th happened. You went off, and how long was it between that event and actually joining the army? Was it?
What, at 16?
Yeah. So from the date of September 11th, where you're like, I need to serve my country. How long did it take until you was in the army?
So September, I was 16, and actually that June, I was actually already signed up for the Air Force.
Wow.
I had to get my foster parents to actually sign my paperwork. I didn't leave right away because I had another year of high school to complete, but that's how I knew. I knew that quick that that's what I wanted to do. And I had to lose some weight to get into the military as well. So I had to, drop weight. And so as soon as I made that weight requirement, I wanted to sign. So that way it would also kind of keep me motivated to continue that path. And so I technically signed up whenever I was 17, but I didn't leave for the military until I was 18 and I graduated high school.
Yeah. And how long did you stay in the military for?
I did 10 years active duty. So I got out in 2013.
Wow. And in that time, you obviously had served. So so you joined the Air Force, right?
Mm-hmm.
What
Yes.
area of what were you doing in the Air Force?
I was military police. So my first few years, I actually guarded nuclear weapons,
Wow.
which was pretty interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
Um,
Is there not any like, I mean, again, I'm obviously the word nuclear, but rarely do you ever come across people that actually guard nuclear weapons, right? So is there not some sort of like health like risk being surrounded by something like that?
I'm sure there are. So where I was stationed at, there's it was already kind of like a swamp, but we kind of called it like nuclear water. So I'm sure that there are health risks associated with some of that stuff, but and keep in mind this is very early on in terms of cell phones,
Yeah.
the cell phone world. Um, I had a flip phone, but I can tell you that the myth of being close to a nuclear weapon and having a cell phone, um, it, that's a myth. So a
Yeah.
cell phone will not detonate a nucleare weapon.
Okay, good, good. Well, you wouldn't be here if it did, and a lot of people wouldn't as well. So it's the good news that. Okay, and let's see, Casey, that's what you did. And did you when? How many times did you travel and serve
So I was doing that. I did the nuclear weapons security stuff for a few years. I deployed to Iraq in 2006.
Yep.
And where I was stationed there, I was actually at an Iraqi detainee prison camp.
Oh wow.
Was This was actually shortly after the whole. I don't know how well you remember or if you're aware of this, but there was an Iraqi U.S. troops abused Iraqi
Yeah. Yeah.
detainees.
Yeah. Detainees. And then they also got in trouble for that,
Right.
right?
And so this was shortly after that. And in fact, while I was there, we were actually transferring some of those. That prison where that happened was closing down because of that. And so we were getting all of their prisoners, detainees, whatever you want to call them. You know, I call them the same thing. It's just easier. But that was interesting, to say the least. And so that place was called Camp Bucca, Iraq, which has now been traced as the founding place for ISIS, by the way, which is interesting. And, you know, on that note, I could actually see how that happened.
Yeah.
I understand how ISIS actually formed. And it was because of how we
The
did
hatred
things.
towards.
Well, how we did things, you know, because of the subsects of the culture. You know, we had to separate. You know, you had to keep all the extremists together, and that's
Yeah.
pretty much what happened. You know, when you have over 1,000, 2,000 extremists all together in one area, in one place, you know, they're going to band together. And that's essentially what had happened. So, but yeah, that was definitely.
What was that environment like, though, as well? I mean,
Yeah, and of course it also played out because of my father being in prison, and there I am, basically working a prison. I thought a lot about that. That actually would lead up to the 2007. Discussion with my father. It was actually, that deployment. And I think it was because I was out of prison, I had a lot of time to think, I had a lot of time to process. And I'm sure the area too. I was starting to kind of get some pent up aggression towards my father. I started to learn certain things about him, things that I didn't like. I guess you can say kind of also resentment. There I am in Iraq, and in a country that's filled with combat and war, and from my perspective, I'm trying to do something good. I'm trying to do something positive in the world. Yet here I am. I'm finding myself at a prison where, to be honest,
there's no reforming these characters. Yeah.
Right. It's more harsher than the prison that he is at. He has the luxury of being in a well constructed facility with steel doors, and make sure he gets fed all the time. And not to say we didn't feed the detainees, but it was basically some fencing out in the desert. That's pretty much what the prison was. It was a bunch of fence, some tents, and that was basically the prison. So there was no real hardened facilities, nothing like a prison that you may be familiar with. It's not like a real prison, and so I would sit there, and I would say to myself, I'm actually doing a harder stretch of time than my own father.
Yeah.
Because here I am in a war-torn country. There's no luxuries around. I'm working a prison. I'm surrounded by a bunch of people that, some of them do want to kill me, want to hurt me. I'm trying to do good in the world. And, I guess I felt like a lot of resentment, that he did what he did, and yet he's like in the safe, secure kind of facility. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And here I am, not in a safe, secure place. And so that's where I think some of my resentment stemmed from. What was that?
Yeah.
You know,
But
and I
but when
started
you started to, sorry, there's a bit of a delay with the Zoom there, but when you started to experience that, yeah, how you said you was with the military for 10 years. When you started to experience those feelings of I'm not in a good place and my father's in a better place and I'm getting resentment for him, did you change anything then, or did you carry on serving? Because I know you've done time in Afghanistan as well.
yeah, that was later. That would be
Okay.
later. But yeah, it was. Um, you know, it was just a combination of that. And shortly before I left for Iraq, I did put in for a change of duty stations. I felt um,
You needed
I felt
something
like
better.
I felt like I needed a change
Yeah.
because of some of these things that I was discovering, and like I said, some of these things were my feelings were changing before I left for Iraq. It's just that being there, really kind of um, solidified it. It's kind of really kind of it really it really forced my hand into believing that my father wasn't who I thought he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with that, being in Iraq, I did start to have some kind of weird dreams and nightmares, and that would also affect me as well. And
What
so,
sort of dreams would you have? Like in nightmares?
dreams of wanting to take out my aggression towards my father.
On
That
him.
right, that resentment, that anger, that it started to build up, and I think that again, considering where I was, that all kind of played a role in that. I was getting more angrier,
Yeah.
and you know, I actually told myself that after I got back from Iraq, I couldn't go visit him, and I couldn't go visit him and tell him what I wanted to tell him, because I was too afraid that I would lash out, and I would be too afraid that, quite frankly, that I would hit him. That I would do some of those things that I saw in my dreams and in my
Yeah.
nightmares, and I would end up in prison myself, and kind of going back to what I said as far as like my childhood. you know that was a motivation for me too, was not to end up in prison like my father.
Yeah.
So but before I left for Iraq, I put in for a change of duty station, and it was a special duty assignment,
Okay.
um, and that entailed doing presidential security. So after I got back from Iraq, I was stationed in Andrews Air Force Base in DC. And actually, what I would end up doing is I did security for Air Force One and for pretty much the presidential
Yeah.
activities that all went around. So I'm not sure if you've ever seen or watched the president
Yeah.
walk off of Air Force One, or walking to. Everything that happens behind that camera shot was essentially my job.
Yeah. A little bit more light-hearted kind of job responsibility.
Right, right, and definitely had kind of like this, I guess, kind of like prestige.
Did you enjoy it?
I did. Not a lot of people can say that they've seen up close and personal Air Force One, or up close and personal how the government works, and the inner workings of that. That was also interesting. But yeah, I genuinely enjoyed it. But of course, after a while, just like with most jobs, it just becomes a job.
Yeah. Okay. So after that kind of job responsibility, kind of what then happened with the military?
So in 2011, I was deployed to Afghanistan, and it was different than Iraq. Iraq, I was, like I said, I was in I was working a prison facility, but Afghanistan was more of, um, you know, we were tasked to help the Afghan army with certain things, and
Yeah.
also expanding the one of the bases that they wanted to use for that training.
Yeah. So
Um,
you were part of the team that effectively, obviously that's been a lot of discussion rights now about like everything that America's done to help the Afghans. So
right,
you was a part of kind of that team then.
right, and so the base that I was deployed to was on the western side of Afghanistan. It wasn't too far from the Iranian border,
Mm.
but yeah, it's still very different than Iraq. Definitely saw and was exposed to more than what I experienced in Iraq, and it would be an incident that took place in Afghanistan that ultimately, I call this kind of like the defining moment, of my life, and that is I found myself in a situation where I thought that I was wrestling with a suicide bomber,
Okay.
and this individual was an Afghan national. He wasn't where he was supposed to be, and whenever I tried to learn and figure out why and what he's doing, he took off on me and started running, and so I tackled him and ended up getting in kind of like this tussle, this physical altercation, and for whatever reason, I could not get control of him. And
Yeah.
of course, because of where I'm at, we also had intelligence that suggested that they were planning an attack, and of course, suicide bombers are very are are very suicide
Dangerous.
bombers suicide bombers are very popular in terms of when planning such an attack.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the tactics that they use. And so that's what I thought that, I was encountering. All of my alarm bells were going off. Obviously, something was going on with this individual that I couldn't pinpoint. I was by myself. My partner was in the vehicle, but he couldn't leave because of the weapons that we had in the vehicle. I was completely by myself. Um, and to kind of fast forward, I got so exhausted and so tired, and I realized that if this person did in fact want to do that, um, the best time to detonate himself or blow himself up would be to wait until more people came. I knew more people were coming to try to help me um, with this person, and I became so exhausted and so tired. um, I just thought to myself, okay, just do it. Just go ahead, blow yourself up. If you do it, you're only going to really take me instead of other people. Um, and so in that moment, I accepted my fate. I accepted, I completely let go. I was fully willing and ready and willing to, sacrifice myself. And what had happened during that, I had an out of body experience. It's a very spiritual experience. And I saw the faces of my mom and my stepmom. And, you know, um, from them, they gave me a very powerful message. And it was, this is not your time. You have so much more left to do. And that was their message. That was it. And, before I know it, I'm kind of back with this individual. Very quickly, I'm able to, get control of him. He turned out, for the record, not to be a suicide bomber, but he didn't have any explosives on him at all. Here's a paranoid schizophrenic who went off his medication. But, in my mind, I didn't have that information, for one, and for two, that made it actually even more dangerous, because if the Taliban really knew who this person was and knew how unstable he was mentally, he would be the perfect person to slip explosives to, or to manipulate, to use for whatever means that they want. But like I said, I didn't have that information. All I had was, what was happening in front of me. But the bottom line is that, my survival instincts, the fight or flight response, the trauma responses, all of those were,
took over.
Took over, were fully activated. And I didn't realize it in that moment. Actually, I didn't realize it until after I came back from Afghanistan. Really what kind of happened. And I started to kind of realize, and it took time for me to process that. I didn't even know how to identify this out of body experience. You're talking about things that, make a person sound crazy. You're talking about things that, may or not be real. You're talking about things that may or may not be of this world. All of these things. And, but it definitely affected me. It changed me. It affected me. More also on top of that, because it affected me, it opened up what I like to call Pandora's box of trauma. So I was now starting to feel those emotions from my childhood. So, kind of going back to me witnessing my mother's death, I still to this day do not remember, do not recall. I don't have any memories, and I don't want any memories.
Yeah.
But I can feel the emotions. I have trauma triggers that are associated with my childhood. I have a difficult time.
Is that now? You still have that now?
Right. Yes. I have a difficult time with people who are controlling, particularly people in positions of power and authority. I don't like to be controlled. I can be very overwhelmed. It can trigger me. Manipulation. I can spot manipulation and control from a mile away. And those are all part of my childhood. I also, believe that, I was sexually abused as a child as well. So because of, that one incident in Afghanistan, it started to bring back the past, quite frankly, with a vengeance. So, I started to feel that. And like I said, that's what I mean by like, it opens up Pandora's box of trauma.
Yeah.
Because, I'm now starting to feel those emotions that weren't necessarily there from before.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy the way the mind works. But so just talk me, because obviously this is, I wasn't aware of this, but when you say about, sexually being sexually abused, I'm assuming you're referring to your father.
Yes.
And was this like, in what stage were these memories come from?
From childhood, I would say probably from, from age 4, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 9. I can't pinpoint a time frame. I don't
Yeah.
recall specific instances, memories, but also um, there's other things that kind of point in that direction, um, in terms of being abused.
Wow. So when you deal with all these emotions, like, did you seek help, or was it something you tried to deal with yourself?
I tried to deal with it myself, and after I got out of the military, in 2013, I tried to, deal with it myself. I tried to, kind of, oh, I've been through X, Y, Z. I can deal with this. I can deal with this on my own. And, the reality is the more that I started to tell that to myself, the more that I started to, have that mindset. I was creating it. I was making it worse for myself.
Yeah.
Um, and things would start to manifest, um, as time went on. I'm somebody that never had a problem or an issue with anxiety, with, you know, things like that. And as time went on, I would start to, encounter things that, weren't there before. For instance, you know, I don't particularly like fireworks. I don't like fireworks, um, anymore. I don't like being scared, being scared unexpectedly, loud noises. Um, I tried to play softball, as a sport, just to have fun. And it's something that I played in high school.
Mm.
And whenever I tried to play it, the the softball that's coming at me, it seemed a lot faster. It didn't feel right to me. And the more that I started to really learn and learn and about trauma and what it does to somebody over time, um, I started to realize that, even playing softball, I didn't like. I had an episode where the ball came up and kind of hit me, in the wrong way, and it freaked me out. And that was the last time that I played softball. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, trauma over a period of time, over a long period of time, and especially the traumas that I've been exposed to, um, have had um, have had an effect
A
on me.
long lasting effect, but it's
Right,
just built up and built up over time.
right,
And it's like a bomb, and it's just
right,
exploded. So,
right.
so you tried to deal with it at the beginning with yourself. Did this affect the army? Did they kind of say to you in the end, like, this is a problem, you have
Well,
to
I was no
go?
longer in anymore.
Ah, okay.
I was no longer in the military anymore. But the experience in Afghanistan, that was a big part as to why I wanted to get out. Um,
Yeah.
I started to see things differently. I started to see the world a lot differently. I wanted to do something different. I also didn't want to go into law enforcement. Um, I wanted to stay far away from it, actually.
Mm.
When that probably would have been the easier, career path for me. It would have been a lot easier if I would have gotten out of the military and to be a police
Yeah.
officer. A lot of my military friends, that's exactly what they have done. For me, that I didn't want that. I wanted to stay far away from it. And I think a big part of that is because I realized and recognized that, you know, I'd be placing myself in very similar situations. And that's not what I wanted.
Mm.
And I think I realized that, over the course of my life, I had seen enough. I've been exposed to enough. And it was kind of like a realization that, um, you know, I just wanted something different. I felt like my world around the military was filled with so much masculinity, bravado. I don't know if you play, video games, or if anyone out there does, the war video games and, shooting and all that stuff. And yes, there's kind of like this bravado to it, let's be Mr. Badass, but it all comes with a price. And I felt that, that's not what I wanted anymore. And that's ultimately why I wanted to get out. And so I had a difficult time transitioning from the military to, just regular life.
Civilian life. Yeah.
And that was tough for me. I worked a job and that was another telling point as far as like how the trauma has affected me. I couldn't handle one of the bosses that I worked with. This person was.
What did you do?
I was in charge of housekeeping at a nursing home. Just something like that, and I didn't like. Yes, I'm sure it was probably one instance, but it really affected me mentally where, again, somebody in a position of power and authority, such as a boss, not knowing what I've been through, not knowing and understanding all the different facades and all the different things that, I've been exposed to. I couldn't do it. And like I said, being controlled it kind of freaks me out. And so specifically, people in positions like that, it was becoming more and more clear to me. And I just thought that, nobody's really going to really look out for me and my mental health and what I need to do more than me. Just a boss at a regular job, they don't really care what I've been through. They don't know what I've been through, nor do they really care. So, that is kind of like how I perceived that. And so frankly, I realized that, really the only way for me to move forward is to, work for myself. So I was kind of shoved into, self-employment and entrepreneurship, really as a means to cope for myself, for me to handle myself.
And what did you do when when you entered the entrepreneur world, what were you doing?
So I started off doing, consulting, marketing consulting. I learned, how to, rank websites in Google and all that thing. I don't know if you're familiar with that, or the term SEO. I really got into that, consulting for businesses and things like that. And then again, just over time, things started to kind of progress forward as far as mental health goes. And that's when I really started to, reach out. I did get professional help. I still am getting professional help. I'm still in therapy. I started to utilize the veterans benefits that I'm eligible for. So really just by doing that, it has allowed me to kind of start to take care of myself more and better. I started to learn about, self-healing and, meditation. I became, really kind of into meditation and into kind of like the spiritual kind of like realm of that kind of like self-healing.
Yeah, nice. So, I mean, what a story. I mean, I think we've sat here now for close to 2 hours, and I'm sure there's loads of stuff that we could still talk about, but let's talk about the book. So you've got a book coming out in November, right?
I had to change my launch window, but it's now March. But yes, I am
Okay.
coming up with a book.
Yeah.
My Two Angels, turning tragedy into triumph.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I kind of go a lot more in depth and detail in terms of my journey, and go well in depth in terms of like the experience in Afghanistan and Iraq, and my childhood, and how I kind of came to be today.
Nice. And just if you was to give us a kind of pitch, kind of almost like a sales pitch on the book, not a sales pitch, but like what can we expect from the book?
Great question. So whenever I sat down to write the book, um, I started to think about who I wanted to read my book, and ultimately what I wanted them to gain from it. Um, and ideally, I'm writing it towards a group of people that have been affected by trauma. And that's who I want to affect the most, are other people who are trauma survivors. Um, Ultimately, what I want them to gain from reading the book is, definitely hope. Want them to realize that you can take any negative situation and turn it into a positive.
Yeah.
That um, there's always somewhere to go, and
Yeah.
there's always an opportunity. That's how I try to live my life, where I'm not focusing on the negative. I'm always focusing on the positives. I'm always trying to focus on the opportunities, and that to me is very important, especially for me, my mental health, my mindset as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Todd, like honestly, I'm so moved by your story. First of all, to go through this, okay, and then not only go through it, but also be brave enough to actually speak to people about it firsthand, just to try and help them, is so selfless. And you really should be so proud of yourself. Like I'm honestly so moved by the person that you are, the person that you've came, and what you're trying to achieve now. And all I want to do is wish you the utmost like support, respect, like everything. I wish you, if I could give you everything in the world, I just wish you success from now, because it's 100% what you deserve. And but before we go, if I was to ask you, what is your recipe to success?
Great question. My recipe to success is actually very simple, and that is to never quit. Don't quit. Don't quit on yourself. Um, I'm someone that does not want to project that everything is all fine and dandy, that everything is healed. I still go through things. I still have bad days. Um, you know, from I think someone such as myself who has gone through the things that they have, you don't ever completely heal from this. You don't completely get over it. You simply have to learn how to live, and to live more comfortably.
Mm,
And that it's okay to take time out for yourself. It's okay to be slower. It's okay to have a slower pace of success, um, as long as you don't quit. And in fact, the only way to fail is if you quit. Another ingredient to the recipe of success for me, not just to never quit. For me, it's vulnerability, and vulnerability has been and is one of my superpowers.
yeah.
You know, a lot of people comment and mention just how open I am, and I think that from a vulnerability standpoint, we all have things that we don't like about ourselves or our life, that we're embarrassed about, ashamed about. There's things in the book that, quite frankly, I would rather leave out, that I don't want to say, that I am embarrassed and ashamed of. But I think that it's important to show it, to highlight it. And by being vulnerable, we're showing our real, true, authentic self. And you're a lot more relatable. And I think that when people can connect with other people, amazing things can happen. Not just relationships, but yes, business connections. Yes, people want to build businesses or make money or to make a difference in the world. It all comes down to people and making connections and having a kind of relatability. So,
Yeah.
and I think that vulnerability is a big piece of that. So that's
Yeah.
what I think is part of my recipe to success, is not just not quitting, but having that vulnerability.
100%. 100%. Well, before we go, like I encourage all of my listeners to go and check out Todd's profile, because again, such an amazing guy. And
what I'll do is I'll provide you with a link to it's basically a pre-sale, or a waiting list, as I call it, for people to jump onto if they're interested. And of course, once the book goes live, I'll reach back out to you and provide you with the actual sale link, the book link. But yeah, appreciate the kind word. I appreciate being on here.
Amazing. Well, I wish you all the best for the future, Todd, and good luck with the book sale.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.